Welcome to the DFS Build MLB edition. I'm Kevin Roberts, joined with Taylor Smith, the man, the myth, the legend, to go over this 10-game MLB DFS slate over at DraftKings. Lots to talk about. Should be a fun slate or horrible because MLB DFS gonna MLB DFS. It's either a lot of fun or it really sucks. By the way, I did do an NBA video earlier today, so you can catch that at the end of this video if you want to click the link, or you can just head over to our channel and find it there. Worth noting, this video is sponsored by DFS Hero. If you want to try a new tool and lineup optimizer, give them a shot. 15% off if you hit our link in the video description below. Please give this video a like if we help you out in any way, and also consider subscribing to the channel so we know that we're helping you out a little bit. All right, Taylor, let's dive right into it. We got a game at Yankee Stadium. Athletics, who are absolutely miserable with a 3.17 projected run total here, up against the mighty Yanks, who are projected for almost 5 runs. So Yankees up against Paul Blackburn, Oakland taking on Marcus Stroman. I have zero interest in the Athletics despite the jump in ballpark, just mostly because they suck and Stroman keeps the ball on the ground. And I do like the Yankees a good amount here, but they're not necessarily, my top 3 for stacks. How are you feeling about this game?
I don't really dislike Oakland. I do think they're kind of a sneaky, decent lineup. It's really not a bad team overall, honestly, this year. But tonight, probably not really getting there. They do have cheap lefties: Seth Brown, Toro, Blade. You can kind of look to, I guess, Ryan Noda, but he's kind of buried in the 9-hole. It's a pure leverage thing just because Stroman might get some ownership, but Stroman himself is the most expensive pitcher on the slate, which he absolutely should not be. I do have minor interest in him if he's going to be significantly lower owned than some of the other 9K guys. Lopez obviously is the chalk. Rodriguez might be pretty popular too. I don't think Stroman's a bad play. Oakland's not a super powerful lineup, even if they are a little underrated. But yeah, I don't have much interest in either team. I don't really want to pick on Blackburn too much with the Yankees either, priced up as well. I don't hate Soto as a one-off, but as a whole, this game's kind of a nothing for me.
Yeah, worth noting, last year Stroman did see a dip in K rate against lefties, and he walked them at 11.3% clip. So good point on the lefties. They do have, four lefties to throw at them projected for the lineup right now. Actually 5 if you count switch hitter Abraham Toro. So yeah, that could be a problem. I don't like Stroman because he's not a major strikeout guy, and he's just really about limiting damage, which not really that bad of a thing against the Athletics, I don't think. But in this park, it just is not like the recipe for a really good pitcher outing for DFS. So yeah, I agree. He's overpriced, but the matchup makes me get to him a little bit. I will get to him a lot less if he ends up being chalky. Right now, he's coming at 16% ownership at DFS Hero. That said, there's a good amount to like. Despite the park jump for the Athletics, they're not that scary here. And they do whiff at a 26% clip. So even though he's not a big K guy, it's a pretty good spot for him. I think it would just be like, does he end up walking lefties and like give up a couple dongs at the wrong time? So because of that, I do agree the Athletics could be an appealing leverage stack, especially if his ownership sticks here at 16 plus. On the Yankees side, I just like the Yankees because we know they have a ton of power, and it's not like Paul Blackburn is an elite pitcher or anything. But yeah, they're
not bad though. He's pretty decent.
He's not a total gas can or anything by any means. So I just think it's the Yankees at Yankee Stadium, so they're totally in play. Got a good run line too, but or run total. But yeah, not like a major top stack for me. Marlins visiting the Braves. We got Trevor Rogers taking on Atlanta. Obviously, not a good matchup for him. Max Fried is at home against Miami. Miami is the one good game he had this year. He had 20 fantasy points. The other 3 games, he's absolute dog shit. So I think he's viable here, but I don't really want to play him. He's a good price, and it's a pretty good spot, but not super excited to do that. And then for offense in this game, the Braves obviously always look good, but Rogers is not a bad pitcher. and they're pretty expensive still. So I really don't think maybe beyond, I'll do a couple Brave stacks surely just because it's the Braves, but maybe beyond like a sprinkling of Fried, I don't think I want to be on this game very much.
I'm going to have a ton of Fried just because he's 8K flat, and he's a pretty good pitcher that is underpriced against the Marlins. Not a very good lineup. They're kind of lefty heavy typically. The righties are not imposing except for maybe Brian De La Cruz, but even he's like okay. As a group, they have an 0.88 ISO against lefties since the start of last year. Like that's just abysmal. I'm kind of giving Fried a pass. Like his first few matchups were rough, like Arizona and Philadelphia. Those are not easy opponents. And his stuff looks fine. Like the velocity's there. It's not really anything scary if you look at his overall numbers. So I do think he's going to kind of bounce back. And he shouldn't be 8K against Miami. So he's kind of a core play for me on this slate. Not getting to Miami. I do think Rogers is pretty good, like you said. So Acuna is a one-off, sure, but stacking Atlanta at these salaries is not something that I'm planning on doing tonight.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not super interested in the offenses. Not playing Rogers against the Braves. Fried would be the only thing I'm interested in here. I still think just him getting slapped around in 3 out of 4 games is a little bit worrisome, but I agree the matchup looks really, really good on paper. Astros and Cubs, the wind is blowing out at Wrigley, so this looks like a really good stackable game. You can talk about the Astros or the Cubs, or you can stack the entire game here. JP France takes on the Cubs, and then on the other side, they have Jordan Wicks. So I don't have any interest in the pitching in this game whatsoever, and I like both offenses quite a bit with a major lean towards Houston. If we look at the stack IQ, at DFS Hero, Houston is the 3rd most owned stack, and the Cubs are actually down here quite a bit. So I think for tournaments, you could kind of go away from the Astros a little bit and fire up a lot of different Cubs stacks and hope it goes their way instead. But from a logical standpoint, Houston feels like the best stack of the slate, in my opinion. What do you think about this game?
Yeah, they're the one I'm getting to the most. Not really a fan of the Padres tonight at Coors Field overall, so I think Houston as the number 1 stack makes sense. Wicks is not bad, but he has had control issues. He does have a double-digit barrel rate on the season, so yeah, and the wind blowing out obviously helps quite a bit for the bats. Righties are going to stand out. Altuve, Bregman, Diaz. McCormick as a cheapie, don't mind. Dubon is cheap. Jake Myers is cheap. Pena, of course. And Alvarez and Tucker both hit lefties well, 4 lefties. So, yeah, I can make a case for pretty much everyone except for Jose Abreu, who is extremely washed. I don't think France is like the dumbest large field play at 5.6 just because cheap pitching is not really a thing tonight. Chicago does strike out a little bit, 26% against righties since last year. So it's kind of a dart throw. I don't love it. I'm not really endorsing it, but I do think it's viable. And yeah, his reverse split is notable. Guys like Morrell, Swanson, Horner, Yan Gomes on the right side of that platoon advantage all look pretty good. Still fine with Bellinger and Happ from the left side, assuming Happ's in the lineup. He's been banged up a little bit. But yeah, if they're going to be overlooked, Michael Busch, another one worth mentioning. It's a deep and pretty good lineup, and I'm not super scared of France either. So, like you said, you can make a case for both.
Yep. I'm going to get to a lot of them both on the slate. All right, we got Jays and Royals in Kansas City. We have Kevin Gausman taking on the Royals. Obviously, on paper, that looks pretty good. Let me just double check what that looks like for him. The strikeouts are down, so maybe not quite as advantageous as we thought. Michael Wacha on the other side taking on the Jays. Obviously, not super excited about Wacha. Yeah, not really liking him. Gausman I do like just because I know he has K upside. It's not really as good of a matchup as we used to see it as, because KC is a lot better than they were even just last year. So that being said, 8.5K, pretty good price for Gausman. I do like him. He's not carrying crazy ownership for his ceiling. He hasn't been very good this year. And I do think Casey actually looks pretty appealing as a leverage stack if he is going to carry ownership. But that's basically where I'm at in this game. I do like KC stacks a little bit, but I like Gausman more. Gausman would be the main takeaway for this game.
Yeah, Gausman's fine. Like it's kind of a similar thing with Fried, like a couple of bad outings, but his velocity was down, but apparently it was also down early last season, and he just kind of takes a while to ramp it up. So I don't mind him for 8.5. It is a good price. I think the highlight for me is Toronto, though. Like Waka, not bad, but pretty hardcore reverse split, fly ball guy over the years. Toronto has a lot of righty power. Guerrero, Springer, Bichette, Justin Turner right at the top of the lineup. Jansen, not a bad hitting catcher either. Not the best ballpark for power, but the prices are pretty reasonable. Nobody's over 4.7 in this lineup. So Bichette for 4.4 looks particularly cheap. I will be getting to a lot of Toronto, unfortunately. Never liked that, but on this slate, I think it's viable because I don't really see them getting a lot of attention.
Yeah, I mean, if they're going to be unowned against Waka, I totally hear you in tournaments. Yeah, the reverse split is interesting. 0.175 ISO against righties, 46% hard contact rate last year against righties, and they have a lot of them. I don't like playing Toronto. I swear to God, every time I play them, I get maybe one run. They always suck. But in tournaments, they look totally fine. Not really a team I'm getting to personally, but I do see it. White Sox and Twins. Pablo Lopez looks really, really good up top against the White Sox, who are down a lot of key bodies, and they were bad anyways. And then Eric Fed. I don't know. I actually like the Twins a lot. So I'm only looking at Pablo Lopez for pitching here. I do like him quite a bit. And then the Twins have the advantage here. They got a lot of lefty power to throw at him. On the other side, White Sox. I mean, Lopez is going to be owned, 44% owned right now. So that's the only argument. You can stack up some White Sox and hope that he craters. I guess I would have a couple stacks in there just because, but I'm like going like 99% Pablo tonight.
Yeah, I'm tired of doing this White Sox thing. I played them quite a bit last night, and they got completely dominated by Chris Paddock. So yeah. I'm sick of it. I'm not doing it tonight. I don't think there's a need. 10 games, I think there's a lot of ways you can go without being blatantly dumb and stacking this awful team against the best pitcher on the slate.
I know. Right?
He's 9-3. Lopez is...
They're not even a positive leverage stack, really. I mean, technically speaking, they are if they crushed him. But they have a 2.51 expected run total. That's gross.
There's just no need to do that tonight. Lopez just priced so 9, like probably be 10K plus in this spot, and he's just cheap. Yeah, Fetty is okay. Like he's not a horrible pitcher with ground ball stuff, but probably not getting there tonight with Fried, only 500 more in a better spot. I do like the Minnesota call. Kirilloff, good lefty power bat. Kepler, Julian, they're all kind of cheap. Carlos Santana looks kind of washed, but he's also cheap, and who knows what can happen. Maybe he, lucks into one a little bit. Yeah, there's no one over 4.4 in this lineup, so you can stack them up and get expensive pitching pretty easily.
Yeah, let's see where they are as far as ownership goes. The Twins are 4th in ownership, but I don't really care. I mean, I really like the Twins tonight. So far as we get going here, obviously you got the Padres and Coors. I'm with you. I'm not like super, giddy about going and stacking the Padres, especially with them being chalk. I really, really like Houston and Minnesota, and that's currently my 5 and 3 right now. It's Houston with Twins and vice versa. A lot of different iterations of that. All right, moving on, Arizona and St. Louis. Obviously, Arizona is always appealing as well. They look pretty good as they go up against Steven Matz. He is not a bad pitcher, but when he faces a lot of powerful righties, he can run into major problems. 0.15 for ISO against righties last year. Wow, his ground ball percentage dipped by 23 points compared to lefties to righties last year, and he gives up a lot of hard contact. So I like Arizona a decent amount here. They're probably like 3rd or 4th as far as where I'm ranking them as my favorite stacks on the slate. A lot of good righties they can throw at him. I mean, you can make the same argument against Tommy Henry on the other side with the Cardinals, but I like Arizona significantly more. I'm not getting to the pitching in this game, just mostly going deep X.
Yeah, I like both offenses. The Cardinals are dog shit, but Tommy Henry is one of the weaker pitchers on the slate. He's a lefty. St. Louis with Contreras, Goldschmidt, Arenado, Jordan Walker. There's some righty power there.
Sure.
Donovan, lefty, but he's cheap. I think Henry has a reverse split anyway, so
he does.
St. Louis, especially at low ownership, presumably, so they're fine. Arizona is a bit more expensive, so it's kind of harder to get to. It is downgrade them today, but Marte, Suarez, Walker, Moreno, Lourdes Gurriel all on the right side of the platoon advantage here. Randall Grichuk's cheap. Blaze Alexander, if he's in the lineup, is cheap. So it's a good mix of expensive and cheap. Corbin Carroll, he's playing injured, and it seems like his power is completely gone. But I can't imagine anyone's going to play him at 5-4 with a lefty-lefty matchup here. So in stacks, I'm fine with that. Yeah, I'm with you. I like both offenses quite a bit, and I will not be playing Henry or the other guy, Matz, in this game.
Yeah, for sure. Good call on Carroll, because I mean, if you're not really paying attention, you're doing an Arizona stack, you're gonna click on Carroll because he's fucking Corbin Carroll. The problem is though, he has a .090 ISO against lefties, so this is not really the lefty-lefty matchup you want to get cute with. I like what you're saying here a lot. I like Arizona as righty heavy as you can get, and leaving Carroll out sounds pretty good to me.
I don't mind Carroll either. Like I said, he's going to be contrarian relative to some of the others, but yeah, he's his upside may not be what it was last season right now.
Yeah. By the way, I mean, if you had any interest in either of these pitchers, and we haven't gotten you away from that, please note that neither of these offenses strike out. So,
especially not Arizona. Yeah.
No. All right. So we got Mariners and Rangers. Logan Gilbert taking on Dane Dunning. Gilbert is a little bit expensive for this matchup. I'd say Texas is very dangerous. Let's see here. I mean, everything looks okay for him, and obviously he can dominate any matchup. I just think he's a little bit pricey for this spot. I don't really want him. Dane Dunning is an okay punt on the other side, but I mean, the Mariners strike out 23%. That's okay. So I think Dunning at 6'6" is okay, but I'm not loving either of these pitchers. Not really guys I want to necessarily pick on that much either, though. I think if you did, I'd go lefty heavy with the Mariners here against Dunning, but I'm just not really finding myself getting to this game.
I love the Seattle side of this one. Dunning's a lot of 406 WOBA to lefties, 4 home runs this year, walk rate 16%, strikeout rate pretty average, no ground balls. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lefties in the lineup for Seattle tonight. I think they're pretty good. Cal Raleigh being the headliner at catcher at 3.9. Clase's cheap. Polanco's relatively affordable at a weak position. Rojas, don't mind. Rodriguez is really the only pricey guy here, righty, but I'm not really scared of Dunning. And Rodriguez, as we know, has major speed and power upside. So I think Seattle looks pretty phenomenal. I'm not really getting Gilbert either. I think there are other pitchers in better spots. Rangers, I don't think they're a leverage tag just because Gilbert's not really going to be owned, but I don't think it's the worst spot to pay up on offense, but no one else is going to play. Like, I just imagine they're going to be between 2 and 4% owned on this slate. And as we know, this is one of the more powerful lineups in the league. So I don't hate Texas, but Seattle is kind of my focus in this one.
Yeah, it's kind of like one of those things, like, do they stand out on the slate? Not really, but if anytime you can get a very, very good offense at basically no ownership, we should consider that. Like, anytime the Yankees are going to be completely overlooked, or the Astros, or whoever, Rangers in this case, we should definitely consider that. Oh, like, we can go get this offense with nobody on them whatsoever. So I hear you for sure. And yeah, I mean, if you're going to if you're not using Dunning, for sure, I mean, Seattle lefties look really good here. So these still are not offenses I'm getting to, but I see the merit in both. Padres and Rockies in Coors, Michael King versus Ryan Feltner on the mound. Neither of these pitchers. Well, actually, I like Michael King quite a bit. 7K flat against the Rockies, who are absolutely lifeless. It's still dangerous, but he projects pretty well. He's going to carry some ownership because he's cheap and because he's facing the Rockies, but I think he's a good play here. I do like the Padres in theory. They excuse me. They're facing a guy he's not very good. So and it's Coors. If Coors could ever actually go full Coors, then maybe we could be rewarded. I personally will probably be underweight just because I'm going to hope the chalk fails here, and a better situation like in Wrigley, hopefully that plays out. But what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, they're not jumping off the page. Like, it's Coors, so obviously play them. But the Padres lineup is also not really imposing with Machado out of it. Like Tatis, yeah, you want him. Cronenworth, lefty against Feltner is probably the preferred option there. I don't mind Jackson Merrill, and Campusano is a pretty good hitting catcher, but otherwise, it's hard to get too excited. Like Bogarts doesn't have much power. Azokar, Ha-Sung Kim, Tyler Wade. It's just not a very good lineup profar. Yeah, I will be playing them. They're not going to be my highest owned stack tonight like they were last night. So fine, I get it. Michael King, good strikeout pitcher. Kind of sketchy control, which kind of gives me some cause for pause at Coors Field, but he is only 7K. The Rockies are atrocious, as we all know. So I get it. He's probably the cheapest pitcher that is firmly on my radar and is going to be in a decent chunk of my lineups. What's going on out there, buddy?
It's not me. Somebody with a leaf blower. So annoying.
Yeah, that's the worst.
That was not happening all day. And then right when we do our joint video here, of course. But yeah, okay. I would be remiss if I didn't mention, obviously, the Rockies look like a good leverage stack. Kings carrying ownership. It's still a team in Coors. The Rockies aren't even going to be very owned, especially for being, in this stadium. They still have some guys who bring power to the table. Charlie Blackmon, Ryan McMahon, Nolan Jones. So I think they're fine. They're a fine stack, especially as a leverage, even more so against the chalkiest team of the slate, right? So I do really like King against the Rockies, but especially in lineups you're not playing King, the Rockies are kind of appealing for tournaments.
Yeah.
All right. Second to last game here, we got Orioles visiting the Angels. Griffin Canning trying to stop Baltimore. Grayson Rodriguez against the Halos. Let's check out the splits here. Lefties can do damage on Grayson Rodriguez. Halos have, 3 lefties to throw at them, so I don't know how big of a deal that is. They do have a lot of power, though, so I will say that. I'd lean more towards the Rodriguez side of this game. And for hitting, I would look more at Baltimore. Griffin Canning has some reverse splits, major power issues against righties. Baltimore's more of a left-handed stack, but they still do have some righty power and just a lot of power in general. So I like the Orioles a little bit. If Rodriguez is going to carry out, he's not really that low, 13%. I mean, I like Rodriguez a decent amount here. He's a little expensive. But yeah, I'd probably go Rodriguez, Orioles here, and get away from the Halos. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I think I'm with you. Rodriguez looks really good. 9.6. He's been good this season. He's a top prospect, so it's not a huge surprise to see him potentially breaking out. LA, not the most imposing lineup. They do strike out quite a bit, especially Sano and Moniak right in the middle of the lineup. Even Trout strikes out a pretty good amount. Not many imposing lefties, so I get it. I will be getting to him a bit. Orioles look really good, though. Canning's been terrible this season. I do think he's a little unlucky, and that he's due to regress in the good way, but it's a good lineup. It's a good ballpark for power, especially lefty power. So Henderson, I'm fine with. Mullins, O'Hearn, all from the left side. Santander, Heston Kierstad is cheap. Just got the call from the minor leagues. Jackson Play, I assume, will start to hit at some point, but he hasn't so far, that's for sure. And Colton Cowser's been hitting for quite a bit of power. So there's a lot to like here, I think, top to bottom. This is probably a top 5 stack for me on the slate.
Yeah, it's looking that way. I mean, if we're looking at just this year, Canning is just a mouthwatering matchup for Baltimore. If you do look at last year, he was very, very tough on lefties, actually. So
he's a good pitcher. I think he's been a little bit unfortunate. I'm not excited to attack him, but I like the ballpark and I like the lineup, so I'm getting there tonight.
I'm wondering if they might be a little bit trappy. Let's look at the stack IQ here.
If you want to go Canning, Canning is 6'8". He's pretty cheap. The Orioles do strike out quite a bit, especially. Yeah, it's not the craziest thing to play Canning, especially if King's going to be owned and he's not going to be for 200 less. Right. I don't mind that dart throw in a larger field tournament.
Yeah, it's one of those catch-22s. Baltimore looks really, really good, but if Canning can kind of revert to his previous form, it's actually not a good matchup for them in theory. All right, last game of the night, we got the Mets visiting the Giants. The wind's blowing out, but that never means anything at Oracle Park. as we know. Luis Severino is taking on the Giants. Logan Webb for the Giants is taking on the Mets. I mean, it's a pitcher ballpark, two decent pitchers. Nothing really stands out for me here. I'm not digging this game at all. I hate that this is always like the hammer game. It's always the last game on the MLB slate.
Well, nothing ever happens in this park, so who cares?
It's usually, but then when you go completely away from it, it's like 10-8 or something stupid.
I do think Webb is one of the better pitching plays on the slate at 8-8. Like, he's a little cheap for who he is. Strikeouts have been down, and it's not a good matchup for K's, but he's underpriced. It's not the greatest pitching slate. I think he's going to be one of my higher owned pitchers, along with Fried and Pablo Lopez, obviously. So I like Webb a lot, but that's really all I'm getting to here. I'm not getting to the Mets. I'm not getting to Severino. And I'm not getting to the Giants hitters against Severino either.
No, I agree. All right, before we wrap it up real quick, let's look at that's the optimal. Let's look at overall ownership. Pitchers strictly here. Obviously, Pablo Lopez against the White Sox leading the way. I think we're in unison and just eat that chalk. He's a good play. But then we got Michael King, Max Fried as the next two owned guys. I think we're pretty aligned there too. But as far as like heavy ownership on the arms go, is there anybody here that you are leery of that you would probably fade at their current ownership?
I guess Rodriguez, just because I like Lopez more. I mentioned Webb and Fried being core plays for me, so he's the one I'd be under on, but I still have a little bit of him, and I am kind of warming up to the Canning thing that we just talked about. I think he's kind of a sneaky play today.
Yeah, I agree with that based on price for sure. The other one would be Stroman. I think he's fine, and it's the Athletics, but it is a park out play for them, and he's a ground ball pitcher and not a strikeout pitcher at all. So I don't think I really want to go pay for Stroman, and I think you already said that too. So we're in agreement there. As far as hitters go, the highest owned hitter is Tatis. So you got the Padres stack. Let's actually just look at the stack. My bad. So stacks, we got Padres as the highest owned stack per DFS Hero. Mariners are second. You are very high on Mariners. I'm very high on Houston, and they're third. I also like the Twins. They're fourth. We both like the Orioles. They're fifth. So, I mean, honestly, all these top five owned stacks, I have no problem if you get to those stacks. But if you can get further away from the Padres and feel good about it, that's what I would do. So out of these top stacks, which stack are you most comfortable with getting away from or being severely underweight on?
Definitely Padres, just because I mentioned the weakness of their lineup without Machado in it, and I think there are other ways to go. Like the Wrigley game looks good. The Seattle we mentioned, Minnesota, all these teams look appealing. Atlanta's the other one. Like, they're just pricey. I don't think Rogers is a gas can, and I'm not really into paying for them tonight. So they'll hit 10 home runs and score 50 runs instead.
By the way, Baltimore has the highest stack leverage percentage, so that's interesting.
Which is weird because like you're getting leverage on what? Like Canning? Like, no one's playing Canning, so that's kind of odd.
I'm assuming you're getting leverage on the Padres as far as stacks go. If all the ownership is going to be up here on the Padres, Mariners, Wrigley, then you're going to gain some leverage. But they're still the fifth highest owned stack. So, all right, but before we leave, let's look at the low owned stacks. Is there anybody down here that nobody's going to be on that you feel could be in a very advantageous spot tonight?
No. Texas, maybe. Like, that's probably the best of that group, but it's a bunch of awful teams against good pitchers. So I'm not super, like, I'd rather play Fried. I'm not playing the Mets. I'm not playing the White Sox, obviously. KC is better than that, but Gausman's also good, and I prefer him over them. So I guess the Rangers by default. I'm not really super hyped about any of this bottom of the barrel trash that you're showing me.
I wouldn't say hype, but I did point out the Royals. If you look at all these teams in like the bottom 10 of these stacks, or bottom like 6 or 7, they have the highest run total. So we just know that they are a better offense than they were last year. Gausman has not been good. So I do like the Royals as a low-owned stack. Nice 2.24% leverage percentage too. And then I think the Rockies, just because they're in Coors, people aren't really going to be on them, and King is going to be chalky. So I think those two low-owned stacks could be interesting and worth targeting. But overall, we're kind of in unison tonight, except for I think I'm not as into the Mariners as you are, but more because they're the second chalkiest stack of the slate. I think there's a lot of good stacks to the point where we do not have to go all the way up and eat like the chalky stacks like the Padres, and it looks like for now at least the Mariners. All right, that's going to do it for us. If we helped you in any way, please give this video a like, and also consider subscribing to the channel so you get videos, you get the alert, and you know when we push out our MLB, NBA, and NFL videos every day throughout the year. All right, thanks for watching, and good luck.